he said that he listened to Whitney Webb on Sam Tripoli, and someone asked her about the Mandela effect, and her brain just broke, and she just completely didn't even know what to say. Right. So, yes, I don't think that she's thinking about, I've never heard her talk about things like time travel, dimensional travel, Mandela effect. I've never heard her talk about, I don't think I've even ever heard her talk about psychedelics or anything like that. She is very, very focused on like the hard and fast, like knobs and wheels of the system that are the
Right,
commons
3D.
that we
There's
all,
a
right.
third
Very,
dimensional.
very 3D. So for
Also,
her,
we can't discount that she came out of Standing Rock.
right, she came out of Standing Rock, which I have a lot of questions about. Well, I think this is just one of the places where I don't know if she was at Standing Rock or she just reported on Standing Rock, but I think the whole standing up side, like that whole thing, whatever the fuck the entirety of that thing was, just like Occupy Wall Street was a few years before, it was to really collect a lot of information about a lot of people and be able to sort of figure out who might do what. And Standing Rock wasn't the point of Standing Rock.
Right.
Standing Rock was a honeypot in order to collect information. Now, so back to the generosity of spirit towards Whitney here for a second.
Okay, but look how many people who are coming out of that Standing Rock have the audacity to tell us what we're supposed to be talking about, what we're not supposed to be talking about. There's almost
all of them. Almost all. Yes.
Correct.
Okay. So that, I mean, I think, that's everybody left there with a mission and they've all stayed on task.
Right.
Right. It was a psychedelic militarized, irregular warfare, Jim Channon, whatever the fucking First Earth Battalion kind of scenario. Right. Yeah. Okay. So, now, in again, generosity of spirit. If she thinks like doesn't want to live in a system that is corrupt and controlled by like mafia type of elements, right, and keeps everybody in servitude and slavery. Now, with that said, she is very clear to point out that everybody gets way too caught up in the lascivious part of the Jeffrey Epstein story and doesn't pay enough attention to the corruption and the financial scandal aspect of it. Yep. And so for her world, that is giving it a holistic assessment. Now, for me, all of that stuff, the scandals, the financial and political corruption is all, and it's funny because these things come into her work, but she just glosses over them like they're just an aside for maybe talking about at the bar one day. To me, this is the whole enchilada, and that is the collection of genetic material and the storage of the supercomputers with that genetic material at nuclear sites and sites where they're working on things like nuclear fusion and whatnot. Like, to me, like, I think that we are completely being lied to about who we are and where we are and what we are and how this realm that we live in actually works. Right?
Okay, wait. I totally agree with you, but I just want to understand, and it might be too much to go into now, genetic material, nuclear technology, how are they being used together?
So fusion creates energy fields that different people have different tolerances for based on their genetics. Okay. And said tolerance acts as the great amplifier or great limiter as to how far out they can or how far in they can go and what information fields they have access to. And the same control system that keeps us in financial scandal, distracted by seductive pedophile stories, doesn't want anybody going a place they can't go.
Correct. Okay.
And if someone can go someplace they can't go, they want that person to go there under their control and retrieve the information for them and whatever. Right?
Okay.
Okay. So you heard her talk about on the Paul Bet-David podcast or one of the others, the Thinking Machines Corporation. And that is the technology that is basically doing exactly what I'm talking about here. But she just brushed right over that and continued on. Now, I think whether she's controlled within her knowledge or controlled outside of her knowledge, I think that she is focused on the things that she truly believes to be important. Right? Yes. And so for her, she doesn't want to live in a mafia state. That's her, and she doesn't want her children to grow up in under slavery controlled by a political and financial mafia.
Here's my question. Mm-hmm. Have you ever either said aloud or had the thought for other researchers in your life, you shouldn't be talking about that.
No,
Me
I've
neither.
never,
Me neither.
I've
Why
said,
does that always come up with these people who are at the forefront?
I've said before things like, I don't like when this person does this, but that is different than you shouldn't do this.
It has never occurred to me in my entire career as a journalist to criticize anyone for following anything that interests them. That is something that I have received so often and am witnessing now between people who I don't fucking trust.
Right. I think everybody should pursue the story that they think is important or that is interesting to them.
Right.
And, to the extent that other people are interested as well, you'll either have a career or you won't. That's just how it goes. Right. I mean, okay. So I think I think she thinks she's like focused on the bigger picture by not getting caught up in the sex scandal aspect of it. But her mind either she doesn't care about or she doesn't know about the other stuff. Or she thinks it's ridiculous or whatever it is, right? So that's her set of interests. So it would all be different if what she said was, that's not an area that I think is important. So I don't focus on it. I think it's divisive, but other people should do what they want. Or I know so-and-so thinks that's the most important thing and you can go check out his work or something. I'd have to go back and listen to exactly the words that were said. So
I felt like it had an edge. I didn't experience her as neutral in that. I was actually surprised. Like, oh, I wasn't expecting it from her.
I'm sure. Yeah. So, right. So, but I think some of her opinion is informed by I don't know that her range, her cerebral range, her intellectual range, her logical and reason range is pretty good. Her imaginative range, her think outside the box range, her metaphysical range is not. It's very narrow.
Hey, superstars, thank you so much for sharing your sacred attention with me. If you are receiving any value whatsoever from my videos, I am encouraging you to give back, to pay it forward by supporting me on my Patreon community, on my locals community, on both. Your support allows me to keep on keeping on and to keep making content like this. It used to be much easier back in the days of a free press, but now given all of the censorship and the shadow banning, it really is challenging for content creators to continue to put out so much work. I'll just speak for myself. I'm excited for it to be easier for me to continue to put out more content. And the primary way that it can be easier is by you supporting me financially by way of my Patreon and or my locals, where for as little as $5 a month, you get to be my hero and receive oodles of bonus content, and we both get to win. Okay, thank you so much for your support, for your attention, and for being omniscopic amazingness.